My name is Darcel Lobo, and I'm the owner and attorney at DAL Law Firm, and wanted to speak with you about for sale by owner transactions. We've been doing a lot of these recently, and so I wanted to give a brief overview of what that process looks like. Now, in a for sale by owner transaction, that is when a seller and a buyer enter into a contract to sell real estate without the use of a real estate agent. So usually in these scenarios, both the buyer and the seller know each other somehow. Maybe they're family, maybe they're neighbors, or somehow the two parties have found each other. But it's not required. You do not have to know the seller or the buyer in a for sale by owner transaction, but that's usually how it comes to our office. So in a for sale by owner transaction, both the seller and the buyer have been identified. We are not helping the seller to market the property, to look for a buyer, and we are not helping the buyer to find a property. The parties have already found each other. They've already agreed to certain key terms of the sale of the property. So some of the key terms that the seller and the buyer would have already agreed to is the price of the sale of the property, when the closing date will be. So when do the parties want this transaction to be complete? Usually it's going to be at least about 45 days out from when the contract is signed and agreed to, but it can vary, especially if it is a cash purchase. Is there going to be any earnest money paid by the buyer for the escrow company to hold in the event that the buyer does default on the purchase of the property? When will the buyer get possession of the property? It is usually at the time of closing, but there can be some scenarios where maybe the buyer has possession of the property either before or after the closing date. There may be a rent back period to the seller after the closing, or the buyer may be occupying the property before closing if they are a tenant. So there are a number of options, but the parties need to have an idea as to when the buyer will have possession of the property if they don't already do so. Also, we need to know if the buyer is pre-approved. If they are getting a loan for the purchase of the home, do they already have a finance company? Have they already been pre-approved by a mortgage company for the purchase? These are things the seller will want to know to ensure that the transaction will be able to move forward and will be able to close. Are there any personal items in the home that are going to go to the buyer in the sale? There may be furniture or other items that are not attached to the home that the buyer would like to purchase included with the home. So the parties should have discussed these options and what that looks like and what the price may be. Another item for consideration is an inspection. Is the buyer going to have an inspection done on the property? That is where they have a third party come and look at the property to see if there are any defects with the property or any issues or repairs that need their attention. The parties should have already discussed this and have decided if there is going to be an inspection. This is just a few of the key terms that the seller and the buyer would have discussed. If not, our office will be asking these questions of both the buyer and the seller to ensure that they have considered these items and we can have a complete contract put together. There are other terms as well, but those are a few of the ones that stick out to me as far as what we talk about at the initial consultation with the seller or with the buyer. In a for sale by owner transaction, our office can represent either the buyer or the seller. We will not represent both. So whichever party contacts our office and retains us is a party that we will represent in that for sale by owner transaction. For either party, we will guide them through the closing process. We will communicate with the title and the escrow company. And if you don't have a title or escrow company, we can provide you with some referrals as far as who to use for the closing. We will also review the title to make sure everything is accurate for either the seller or the buyer to make sure that there are no liens or any other issues with the property itself that we could see from the title report. We will also review the final closing statements from escrow to make sure that they are accurate for either the seller or the buyer. So if you are considering selling your property or buying a property in a for sale by owner transaction, give our office a call or send us an email. We'd be happy to chat with you and represent you in that process. If you have any questions, give us a call at 206-408-8158. Thank you and have a great day.